I'm freshly shorn and ready to answer your questions. Let's get to it. Welcome back, friends. Trying something new with the lighting. I don't know how it's going to work. But the content will be stellar as always. So it's time, it's not really question time, it's answer time. I would say the question that I've gotten most often is every time I wear this shirt, where did you get the shirt? Where can I get a shirt like that? And the answer is simple. You take an old shop shirt or mechanic shirt and the 4-inch Surly logo patch and you iron it on. Simple as that. This is an old Schwinn homegrown shirt that I've had seemingly forever. And the 4-inch logo patches are back in stock, and I'll have them on the web store probably by the end of the week. There you go. So question number one, Chaz Warp Drive, Senior Warp Drive, have you heard of the Dust Bowl 100 gravel race in Eminence, Indiana? I signed up for it based on a Facebook ad and plan on making the trip from Milwaukee this summer. I can't find a whole lot on it, and I thought maybe some folks who are more local have attended, participated, or know anything about the area. Don't know anything about it, Chaz. Sorry. Eminence, Indiana, by the looks of it, is kind of southwest of Indianapolis, sort of north of Bloomington. Don't know anything about the event, have never been to the town, but I can imagine that it's probably on the hilly side. Once you get down around Bloomington, it definitely gets lumpy. So yeah, prepare for a little bit of climbing, I'd say. Let's see. Peter. Hello, Peter. We're all aware of the bicycle shortage. Well, we here are aware. I still talk to people on a weekly basis that are not aware. But we now hear that significant product is bottled up waiting for shipment across the Pacific, so that raises a question. Will the floodgates open once logistics catches up? Does that mean that retailers, which have ordered whatever they can get, may suddenly have a glut of product? In short, what is the end game here? It's not just that it's sitting waiting to come across, although that is happening. There's a container shortage, apparently. So a container gets loaded up either in Taiwan or China. It comes over here. It does not go back until it's full. And since we don't export much and we don't make much, the containers just end up sitting over here. There are, I read a story last week, 30 some odd container ships that are either at anchor. They're at anchor waiting to get into the port of Los Angeles. There are more ships. They had to move more ships to an anchorage north of Los Angeles, I believe. And on top of that, they have what they call a drift zone. And they have ships just sitting out there floating. And, they float until they kind of reach the end of the zone. And then they fire up the engines and they move back in. And they're just bobbing around out there waiting for spots at the anchorage to open up. So COVID caused a shortage of employees at the manufacturing level, and it's also caused a shortage of employees in the shipping yards. They don't have enough people to unload these boats. The last part of the question was a little confusing. What's the end game? In short, survival. I heard a number a couple of days ago that 20 to 30% of bike shops aren't going to survive 2021. Either because of what you alluded to, they loaded up on product that just because they could get it, and now they either, can't sell it or can't pay the bills, or they just can't get product. So the end game is survival, I think, Peter. Ollie Perkins. I have a 1998 Specialized rock hopper with a suspension fork. Would it be possible to convert this into an all-around road bike? New fork, new handlebars. This might upset the geometry of the bike, so maybe not a good idea. No, I think it's a good idea. It definitely can be done and has been done. Your theory about upsetting the geometry, though, is sound. You need to make sure that whatever fork you end up with, the axle to crown measurement is, roughly the same. Dealing with a suspension fork, it's going to be a little different. But then the fork offset also has to be the same. Those numbers for that suspension fork should still be out there on the internets. 1-inch forks are probably going to be a little harder to come by. The other option, and one that I can recommend wholeheartedly, is a Crust Clydesdale fork. Those forks were designed specifically for 26-inch mountain bikes that had suspension forks. It essentially turns your old 26-inch mountain bike into a cycle truck. I have one. And I had it originally on an old Raleigh mountain bike frame, and then just recently moved it over to a long haul trucker, rim brake long haul trucker frame. They work great. They ride surprisingly well. It takes a little bit more to doing, because you got to get a 20-inch wheel to stick in that fork, but that when you get it, it's going to ride good. They do come in a 1-inch, and I believe the 1-inch still comes with a threadless headset. So that's an option. All right. Philip says, can you ever see product reviews becoming a large part of your content? I certainly would like to do more. I don't know if I would say large. The challenge that I have is that, I'm also a retailer. And quite honestly, I think the channel is going to have to be a lot bigger before I can reasonably expect some company that I don't do business with on a day-to-day basis to just send me product. So I certainly would like to do more. The product content that I do now is, all stuff that I sell, but I sell it and I talk about it because I have used it, I currently use it, and I really believe in it. So large part, I don't know, but I think certainly you can expect more as soon as there's product. Okay, Parky wrote a novel. Thoughts on some carbon bikes and some newer technologies they're using to make carbon more compliant. Specialized Future Shock, Trek ISO Speed, etc. Best piece of apparel that you think cyclists need. Worst bike shop you visited. And then he tells me a story about a bad experience he had at a bike shop. Sorry about that, but I think you made the right decision by just choosing another one. Could be that they just had a bad day, you know. Retail's hard, man. It's no excuse, but everybody has bad days. Best bike shop you visited? What do you mean other than mine, Parky? Come on now. Best city you visited in the States for cycling. Bikes that you've moved on from that you miss. Okay, there's a lot here. So I don't have anything against carbon bikes. I've owned a handful in my life. They just don't interest me anymore. I think they're very sterile. You know, if you look at steel bikes, they all tend to take on the personality of who is riding them. Carbon bikes all kind of look the same. It's harder to bolt stuff to them. I mean, that's changing a little bit, but still, I don't know about bolting racks to carbon forks. So yeah, I don't have anything against them, but they just don't interest me. As far as the things to make carbon more compliant, I was a Trek dealer when that ISOSpeed decoupler first came out on the Domani, and my thought then was pretty much the same as my thought now. If you just put bigger tires on it, it would have probably done the same thing. But at the time, trying to get a racer type to ride 28s was a challenge. Now they're riding 32s. So, I think it just adds a level of complexity to the bike that doesn't, and a point of failure, an additional point of failure, potentially. I don't know. And I don't know much about the Specialized deal. I mean, gluing pieces of gel into the fork. I don't know. I suppose, I've heard it works, but I don't know how. Gear that you need, I don't know. I haven't worn padded shorts in well over a decade. I ride in normal clothes. I don't use clipless pedals anymore. I think the gear that people really need to have dialed in is saddle handlebar pedals. That's take care of those 5 touch points. And everything else should and, hopefully take care of itself. The deal about the bike shops, honestly, I don't visit bike shops too much / at all. I'll go, I went to a couple this week, one just out of happenstance. I made a wrong turn and ended up in the area of a bike shop here in town, and I only went in to see the employees, the owner, and because I've known her forever and hadn't seen her in a long time. So yeah, if you worked at a bank, would you spend your free time going to other banks? I know it's not exactly the same, but the best cities, honestly, the one that I have ridden in is, Washington, D.C., oddly enough, is pretty well set up. And Minneapolis. Minneapolis seems to be pretty dialed in. As far as connectivity of the trails they have, which is always the key. It's great to have trails, but if they don't connect with other trails, you can't really go anywhere. We're struggling with that still here in Indianapolis. It's getting better, but it was a thing that... bikes you've moved on from that you miss. Not really. I've owned so many, and I've sold so many. I will tell you that I have hesitancy sometimes in selling them, but once I decide to sell them, that's it. There will always be more bikes. Thanks, Parky. That was a lot. And then I've saved the what for me was the most thought-provoking question for last, and it comes from David, who was one of my first patrons. He's been very supportive, and he knows how much I appreciate that. What is your vision for the Psychic Derailer, both the bike shop and the YouTube channel, and how close are those visions to being realized? I don't know that they'll ever be realized, and that answer will make more sense here in just a second. There's a question that, comes up in my mind from time to time, and I'm sure it comes up, with anybody that does this, that puts, some degree or amount of their life out on the internet, and that is, how far do you pull the curtain back? How much do I let you in, right? I would say right now you're probably getting 50%, if I'm honest. But if you'll allow me, let me peel back one more layer. I've spoken before, and hopefully not ad nauseum, about the challenges that I and a lot of other people have faced in the last, 12 plus months. And I've always had this kind of lingering fascination with Eastern philosophy. It wasn't a fascination that was gnawing enough for me to actually delve into it and try to understand it. And 2020 kind of changed that. And it seems to me that there's a thread or threads that run through Taoism, Buddhism, Zen Buddhism specifically, and to some degree the Stoics. And that thread has to do with suffering. Not only the suffering that we cause other people, but the suffering, I think, in large part, that we inflict upon ourselves. I think that riding a bicycle, for whatever reason, if you're paying attention, gives you a glimpse into what life could be like. That's going to sound like a woo-woo overstatement, I'm sure, but I believe it to be true. When you ride a bike, for me, everything slows down, and all the, pardon the expression, bullshit goes away. And it has shown me, in retrospect, now thinking about it, that there's a better way to do this. That the way we choose to spend this finite time and the things that we worry about and the things that we preoccupy ourselves with are really not all that important. And I guess, so what the answer to your question is, the goal is the same for both. The goal is to show people that riding a bicycle, and I don't care what kind of bicycle it is, and I don't care how far you ride and how many days you ride, but just the simple act of riding a bicycle can make your life better. Period. Full stop. And so that's the goal. And I don't know that that is ever going to be done. I hope I've done justice to your questions. I thank you for asking them. I always, I appreciate them, and I appreciate all the kind words. Really makes a difference. Till next time, be nice, work hard, ride bikes, play music when you can. I'll talk to you soon.